Hi, Linda.
Hi, how are you, dear?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good.
Good.
See,
We finally did it. So, first, I want to thank you for being willing to do this because I know it's not easy. It's not easy for there's a lot of history and there's a lot of emotions that comes with this topic. So thank you for being willing to do this. There's a lot of we've had some good luck with some people who've been willing to talk to us, but not a lot of people are willing. So and there are a lot of reasons for that, and I understand. So I want to thank you for this and just kind of I guess we'll just kind of dive in. This is just going to be casual. We're learning as we go. If you want to kind of just start with just a little bit of history and background of how you ended up in with the Aransas Pass Police Department, and yeah, if we want to start there, go. I'll let you take over and.
all right, well, 1977, I went into law, actually 76, but in December of 76, I decided to uh, look for a career in law enforcement. And I began dispatching at nights and going to the police academy days in order to get that accreditation. Met and married Mike, who 6 months later decided he wanted to go into law enforcement. In 1979, the new chief of police, Melvin Shedd from Aransas Pass PD, contacted me and asked me to come to work for his department as a dispatcher. Um, I agreed to do it and went in September of 1979. Finished the police academy, and 2 years later, I transferred into the criminal investigation division, first as secretary, then investigator. And by 1989, I had made the rank of lieutenant with the Aransas Pass Police Department. One of my primary jobs, or my primary concern, was juvenile crime or juveniles as victims. So there was a department policy that any offenses, any reports involving children below the age of 17, I was to be contacted by the duty officer right away. Um, it wasn't unusual to have young girls Alyssa's age come up, quote, run away, unquote. They often were just something that had happened in a family and a child was acting out a little bit. We were able to resolve the situation, but Alyssa was different from the beginning. I knew your family because I had a lot of interaction because of Tony. Tony had issues in being able to sometimes control his behavior. A very curious child, and that sometimes got him in trouble. And because he was under 10, there was nothing I could really do other than talk to Tony.
Yeah.
But I did. And your mom would often bring you kids and Tony to me so I could talk to Tony about something that was going on. So the morning your mother walked into the police department after Alyssa come up missing, the minute I saw her in the hallway, in the entryway, and at that same moment, the dispatcher is handing me the runaway report or the missing report with Alyssa, and I knew that something was really wrong. I just didn't realize how wrong. Um, I think at that time, as a department, we put everything into initiating the investigation that could be done 12 hours behind time. We lost a very critical 12 hours. And because of that loss, it has put us where we are now, 35 years later, with no answers.
That was something else. That one, we go. I mean, 35 years is a long time. We go back a long, a a long time. And when we were thinking about, there's just so much that was going on at that time. You know, when we talk about Tony and we always smile. I noticed that with Richard too, or with anyone we talk about Tony and we smile. Um, we had we knew you, and like you were saying with Tony, Tony knew you as just, you know, Linda Thompson. There was no two names. It was just one name, Linda Thompson. And so, you know, at that time you know, when people say, you know, we'll get into that more later when I hear certain people talk about the conflict of interest and this and that and that and this, you know, Aransas Pass was a small town, and you were bound to already know everybody because of how small it was. It wasn't that, you know, um, it wasn't a big city. And so everywhere we went,
we went to school with, we bought groceries with, we shopped at Walmart with
mhm,
everyone.
everywhere.
And um, and we knew so much about each other just because our lives buffed up against each other on a daily basis.
Yes.
Uh, the aspect of small town policing, the one thing I have to say in favor of it is the fact that you do know your community, and you gives you a direction to look and a direction to start because you have some knowledge of the community. We went to ball games and track meets and little league, and we were a community.
Mhm.
You know, Tony, you say we talked about Tony and we smile. Tony wasn't a bad child. Tony was a very gifted child. He
Yeah.
just didn't have some of the filters that other people did. And if he was curious about something, he was going to try and find that answer. And that sometimes got him into a little bit of mischief.
Yes, and that was something that's always upset me when people have talked about Tony being involved in Elisa's disappearance or somehow. I mean, what is your take on that when they bring up this
Well, number one,
theory?
it's ludicrous, ludicrous, ludicrous. He was not even 10 years old. He was way smaller than Alyssa. He loved her. He wouldn't have done a thing to hurt her. He protected her. That was his big sister. And she was the one that I spoke to. She was the mouthpiece. Your mother spoke great English. She had developed a real working knowledge through the years, but she was more secure if Alyssa was translating.
Mhm.
And that way I knew that your mom was getting my message. I knew that Alyssa would tell her exactly what I was saying and explain it the right way.
Yes, yes, and that was the one thing that you know, Elisa was always kind of the center of our lives and you don't realize it at the time. You know, Elisa was the mouthpiece and kind of the center that kind of made sure that we were doing what we were supposed to be doing as kids, making sure we were safe, making sure we were listening to mom. And you know, of course, me and Tony, we were you know, Tony, you know, and me. And so when you talk about that day when we came into the police station and you didn't see Elisa there and you just immediately knew something was wrong. What do you, we'll just go back and there's a lot to cover, because there's something else that people have said that's really upsetting, and I'm sure it's upsetting to you too, is when people say that nothing was done, that the police did nothing. At the very beginning, they botched it. You know, you've heard, you name it, we've heard it, that it was, that the effort wasn't put in very early on. And I was there, you were there, my mom was there, we were there, and we witnessed how fast and how furious everything seemed to get moving once it started. It just, you know, once we were in there that morning, it seemed like it was so fast that it's hard to just even keep track because there was so much going on at that time. What do you remember? What were your first steps as law enforcement?
And my first steps was to find boots for the ground, calling in our law enforcement explorers and off-duty officers, and broadcasting, across our region there, Rockport, Aransas Pass, Ingleside, letting everyone know that we were working a very active missing child case with suspicious circumstances. And at times it seems like it went fast. At other times it was almost like I was walking through honey, trying to get my feet to pick up and move down and move forward, because it was just we had to go to work. And I have to admit, and I will tell you this again and again, I feel like your family was failed by our police department in that first 12 hours. The officer that took the report wasn't there very long. He thought there was really nothing to it. He thought it was a situation where some little girl didn't want to go home when her mama wanted her home. And that's sort of how he left it. So our department deserves the criticism for not doing anything in a timely manner. That first 12 hours changed the complexion of everything. We've had a person of interest, a suspect in this, and had we had the knowledge that first 12 hours, had we been able to work at that first 12 hours, I think we just would have been able to have resolved it in one way or another. What more could we do? We had a bloodhound there immediately that first day. We waited 3 or 4 days before it dawned on me about the Caesar group. That was the dog team that came in, and I had just returned from a conference, a Crime Stoppers conference, where I was made aware of the Caesars, Children's Education Search and Rescue program that was done up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They came in and they brought over a dozen dogs and over 40 personnel to work with the dogs and work in a command center. And we worked 16-hour days with that Caesar unit as long as they could stay there. And we covered literally every inch of Aransas Pass in that 3-day period of time, running those dogs at 16 hours a day. We had helicopters. We had boats in the waterways. I can't even think of what all we did. That was the very first day, was just getting everybody called to arms and getting organized. And our day started in the morning and it went until we couldn't go anymore at night. There were no 8-hour days. There were 16 and 20-hour days. And that went on for weeks and weeks. I know that I didn't have a full weekend at home until late October. And the first time I didn't go back out on Sunday after working Saturday, I felt guilty. And the first time that I stayed home for 2 days in a row, I felt guilty. But I could not think of anything else to do. We had not only had we worked with the professionals, but I think I've told you this before, psychics were contacting us. And I was desperate. Any avenue of information that came in, we ran down. I spent several weekends with an area psychic who took me to 2 or 3 different places where a child's death had occurred. It just was not Elisa's.
And there were several people that you had talked to, and there were several witnesses who had said that they had seen Elisa walking that route on Goodnight Avenue that night. Can you tell us about the the people that you had talked to and what they had told you? Because that's something I think a lot of people, for some reason, they seem to just, like I was telling Richard, you get in a vacuum when there's rumors and conjecture and accusations, and you get all this crazy stuff that starts happening in this vacuum, and people don't want to even think about the logic and the they just want to stick to this crazy nonsense over here and not try to look at what was actually done in the facts. And so this is where we're setting the record straight, right? You know,
The last person to see her, actually, that spoke to her was Mr. Pierce,
mhm,
right across the street, and he was the one who had the first flyers, the
mhm.
flyers that we still use. He had those made up within hours of that morning. Uh, one of our detectives' father, Floyd Jones, was a local resident and diver. He was one of the ones who thought he had seen Alyssa get into a small car at Goodnight and
Eighth,
yeah, 8th and Goodnight. A
Mr.
young
Barker.
and Mr. Barker saw her as or Mrs. Barker saw her, I think, out the back window. She was washing dishes. And I think she said something to Mr. Barker. So he remembered the incident. And then there was several weeks later, a young boy by the last name of Alanis. Can't remember his first name,
It
maybe
was
George.
Elijah. Mhm.
Elijah Alanis. Had been telling his mother that he had seen Alyssa that day, and she didn't really believe him. But because he was so adamant about him, she finally called me. And I went over and I talked to him. And, what he described was very similar to what Mr. Jones told us. Uh, but it was such vague descriptions of the car that, it's not that it sent us to any one person or any one vehicle. We were looking for a small two-door, probably with a back seat. And that was as much as we knew.
Was there anything said? Because I've heard of some witnesses had talked about a maroon car.
That was Mr. Jones, and I think the Alanis boy said it was a green car,
Oh,
but
okay.
uh, said it was a two-door car and that the back seat folded up for somebody to get into the back seat.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that's interesting. So it kind of makes you think about some things. Um,
Yeah, a quick ride. Hop on in. I'll give you a ride.
mhm. So why don't you tell us about, I have very vivid memories of being in the police station. I don't know. I know there was that first, and sometimes when things get kind of mushed together, it's hard to know, was it this day or was it this day or the day after? But I remember vividly being at the police station and we're being, everyone's they're talking to my mom, and I know they talked to me. And then I remember Bob Green was there at the police station, and Debbie was in the like the waiting room. And then I
Mhm.
remember sitting there, and all of a sudden Bob Green gets out. And let me specify first, Bob Green was the father of Debbie Green, the little girl that Elisa was going to meet that day. Sometimes I forget that I may be talking to people that have never heard the story, and that's my, I get just so I just remember Bob being upset, and he gets up and he storms out of the police station. He tells Debbie, "Come on, Debbie, let's go." And they booked it out of the police station. And I remember thinking in my little kid brain, like, why is Mr. Green so mad? Why is he so upset? And why don't you tell us on that end, on your end, what was going on when you were talking to him of what might have triggered that reaction?
Well, Bob Green came off from the beginning as very defensive. Um, he he inserted himself in a way in the beginning as being someone who was trying to help. He was to your mother that he was looking, someone trying to help. Um, Bob Green was suspicious because from the beginning, because there were issues, behavior issues with his own child that were very well known to me personally as an officer. And something about his attitude, something the way about his defensiveness, his uh, not wanting us to talk to his wife or his daughter. His explanation of where he had been that day, he told my husband, Mike, that he had been mowing the lot down on 13th Street and got tired. So he got in his car and went to sleep inside the little storage building. Well, this is August in Aransas Pass, Texas. And Mike checked with the area radiologist, and the greenhouse factor, had he been asleep in his car the way he said he was asleep in his car, he would have been dead. There would have been no way he could have survived a nap in that car inside a metal building in August. Mm-hmm. So from the beginning, he was a very, very much a person of interest, just not anything that we could put our hands on to connect him and to prove.
Mm-hmm. And there was, like you were saying, talking about there was history with this family. There was history with there were things that you were aware of that were happening.
There'd been another girl in the community that made an outcry that Bob Green had molested her. And she recanted, not because it didn't happen, but because her dad, who I knew very well, did not want her testifying in court. He didn't want anybody to know it had ever even happened. You know, like I said, I had my own suspicions due to Debbie's behavior. And then, you know, after Elisa came up missing, a couple of years later, I actually worked a case where we convicted Bob Green of molesting his daughter, Debbie. Mm-hmm. And Debbie and her mother left the community while he stayed and finished out his sentence. You know, now we know that as soon as he completed his probation, he took off and reconnected with Terry and Debbie, and they continued their life. But during the course of time that I was investigating Debbie's molestation, I found out that Bob Green had molested her older sisters. So you have a repeat offender. He's a pedophile. And pedophiles don't change. You don't cure a pedophile. That's what they are. Just as we are a heterosexual, they are a pedophile. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there was also looking back. I at the time as a child, you're not seeing things. You're seeing things differently. There were a lot of little girls always at their house. Debbie was always bribing the neighborhood girls with either money or treats. He would give her money or give her candy or something, and then she would come out and say, you know, who wants to? My dad's going to take us to the store, or my dad's going to. You know, I have candy or I have a new doll. I mean, you know, looking back now, and I understand that Debbie had a lot of, you know, behavioral and mental health issues at the time too, but it almost seemed like kind of a luring and I'm not saying, I know she wasn't aware of it, but it was like a luring type.
And that is probably the most predominant pedophile attractor is they will use one child to bring in another. Mm-hmm. It's not threatening, you know. And then you're allowed to ride on dad's lap while he's driving the car, or, you know, going to the beach, and
yes,
he's around little girls with their swimsuits on, and, you know, very inappropriate, a whole lot of lap sitting and patting and touching.
Yes.
And it's all known as grooming. It was grooming behavior.
Mm-hmm. That's something that at the time, you know, I mean, everyone just knew him as nice Mr. Green. If you're not looking behind, you're just seeing the little kids, you know, we don't, you don't always know, you know, unless it's an outright, you know, if someone like Ralph, my mom's boyfriend, he was outright he was mean to us. So we knew, oh, he's mean, stay away from him, he's dangerous. With Bob Green, he was nice. So we get and that's all part of that facade, you know. And so everyone thought he was nice. And there would be times he would take us to, take us to the beach, take us to get candy, take us, spend the little girls to spend the night. And sit on my lap so we can drive, you pretend drive the car, Dad's car, Mr. Green's car. And the one thing that always, and I'm just going to lay it out here, the one thing that was always strange is the way that Debbie's room was. And Debbie and her parents' room, there was a accordion closet that just opened both way. It was like an entry, a doorway to go in and out from one bedroom to the other, which as an adult now, I think that was awful strange. Why was there an accordion closet door that opened to the parents'? Why not have a wall there for the one side and where the child can get in and get their clothes?
Clothing.
So
Mhm.
that as an adult now looking back, I don't know if they were installed there before, but that was awful strange. And all the little girls that were always over there at Debbie's house, so
People didn't want to play with Debbie. Everyone was afraid of Debbie. She could be perfectly fine one moment and then just became raging,
oh
physically
yeah,
aggressive,
yes,
and attack. Attack
physically
adults.
attacked. Yes, physically
And
attacked. And that's what I would try to explain to people. Anything could set her off. We wouldn't even know what the trigger was. We didn't know if it was too much stimulation, if there was a jealousy that we couldn't pinpoint it. We just knew when there was more than a hand, there could only be one-on-one, one or two friends. If there were more than that, and then the trigger would start and the rage would happen and she would physically attack me, physically attack anybody who was where who she was raging at the time. And there was always something with me. I don't know. It just Elisa was older. She can kind of, because she had her way with us kids to kind of calm us down. I think she had a way with Debbie, so she wouldn't attack Elisa, not that I ever recall. um but with me, I was
competition. Your competition.
yeah.
Um,
And it feels
wanted
like that's
Elisa.
Yes. And I feel like that's how it is still to this day. There's still some kind of competition between, I mean, I'm comfortable in myself, but with Debbie, it's always felt like she's competing for the attention for Elisa. And so even in this,
Attacked out of that child's head, or woman's head. She's not a child anymore, but very much a wounded woman,
yeah.
raised by a alcoholic and a pedophile.
Yes, and several times growing up as I mean, this wasn't something that I've made up or that someone told me. This is something she told me directly. She told me that her dad was molesting her, and Terry had mentioned it to my mom too. So it wasn't like it's something I made up or rumors or this is what she told me, but she denies it. Of course, she denies it, and so it's neither here or there, and um I don't mean to have this come off confrontational, but there's a lot of hurt and a lot of things that have happened because of the accusations she's made against my family. Like the repercussions of what she's done are far-reaching, and the amount of damage that she's created. So it's just yeah.
Well, she, because of her insertion into this back in 96 or 2016, the whole picture got skewed.
Mhm.
And the direction of a positive reintroduction of an investigation was just stopped. I mean, it um, just came up short. Nobody did anything except create some pretty negative rumors about the family.
Mhm.
And that's where it's been, stalemated ever since.
That's a perfect word, stalemate. It's just like a cloud that's still just hanging over us. And until and unless that issue is resolved, we're still stuck in 2016. And people don't understand that we're still stuck in 2016 because of what was done by Debbie Green, by Texas EquiSearch, Christine Villarreal Peña. They did enough damage to last a lifetime. And then you have law enforcement that just sat on their thumbs for 8 years after this, saying nothing. And the only reason why things have been done is because we finally decided, no, this is not okay, and this is not acceptable. As a law enforcement agency, you cannot do this. So we've made so much noise in the last couple of years that finally we've come to where we are now, where now the Texas Attorney General's office is now looking at the case, and we've got so many people looking at this case and so much attention. And that was only because of the noise we were making. It wasn't because they decided, oh, we're going to do something about this case. So that's always been, as you very well know, a sore spot. Okay, Linda. So we'll go ahead and I know you're not feeling the best right now. You've got a headache, so we'll go ahead and we'll just wrap it up, and we can pick up on the next our next interview. Do you have any final words for this first our first session?
I guess my final words would be that I hope that this will open the eyes of new investigators who can look into the case and see what I could have done or should have done, and see if there's anything we can do with modern technology that can answer some of the questions that are still there.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Well, we'll pick up on the next sometime next week, and we'll pick up on some theories, and we'll definitely tackle 2016 because that's a whole topic in of itself.
We need to discuss Ralph Gonzalez and the investigation that went into that.
Okay,
And
definitely.
yeah, so
Definitely. Okay, thank you so much, Linda. Thank you for doing this, and you have a good night.
all right, honey, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.